Let's add a second light this time because I'm always doing shoots without two lights. And I just want to add a second light to show you what it could do, especially with a black backdrop. And we'll move into that. We'll start with the color and then go into the black. Now, I'm going to be using two V100s. I have the main light as a Nikon light. And the side light or the rim light or the hair light, whatever you want to call it, is the Sony. Remember, you can use different brands of light if you have the remote for your camera. So I'm using the Sony remote. I have the Sony branded V100 here and the Nikon branded V100 here. It doesn't matter. This will work perfectly if you have the right remote for your camera. So I know a lot of people ask, and I did, one of my private videos, member videos on this. You just need the Sony, if you're using a Sony remote or the Nikon remote, whatever you're using. These work the same no matter what. It's only when you put these on the camera that you need the specific branded flash. That being said, so today we're using this new umbrella. This is that small, it's not as small, but it's still a small umbrella. It's a threefold. We'll use that on the main light, and we're also gonna use just the bare bulb with this. You know how this is your bounce card. I use it in both directions. I use it to subtract light and I use it to bounce light. So you'll see me switching that back and forth during the shoot as well. Now this umbrella, I do like this umbrella. It's the quality of these aren't the best in the world, but I think this one is a little high price for what it is, but it's the only one out there, so I'm buying it. That's simple as that because I like this small size. Now, you remember the shoot through that I used. There is a difference in size, obviously. This is tiny compared to this one, but I do love the bounce reflective white versus the shoot through. So I'm happy with this. It's gonna do just fine for me. And then the rim light, I have one of those cards on as well. And also, let me just take this off so I can show it to you up close. And I also have a grid on it. So this is going to protect it from either hitting the camera or the backdrop, depending on how I'm using it at the time. And I'm using the black side, so it doesn't bounce anywhere but out, because I don't want the light shooting out this way. So if I had the white side on here, even with the grid, it may push light out, and I don't want that, so I switch it around. These are very, very handy, for that kind of thing. I don't always use them for just on camera or holding the flash, but I do use them in the studio all the time because they're so convenient and so you can control the light with them. Anyway, again, I'm using the Sony a7R5. I'm using the Tamron 28-75. I love this lens. I really do. I think the quality of this lens is fantastic. The image quality. I have no complaints with it whatsoever. Whether I'm shooting at 2.8 or 7.1, it just doesn't matter to me. Now I'm going to keep this stopped down quite a bit for this shoot because I want her in focus, I want her close in focus, and I want to push these to the limit. Now, when I'm shooting the backlight, this is on manual. It has to be because a lot of people say, hey, I can shoot in TTL with these. It works just fine for me. It's impossible. I'm sorry, no matter what, it's impossible. This thing is going to fluctuate so much. Always keep this in manual. I keep this around 1/256th power or 1/128th power, and once in a while I'll go up to 1/164th power. But usually it's a lot lower than that because I don't want that blazing light on our face. And I guarantee you I have a couple like that to show you because I want you to see what it is when you're overlighting from the backlight. I just want that touch of light or just to light up her hair, especially when I switch over to the black backdrop. The Nikon, I am purposely shooting in TTL with this remote, with the Sony camera and the Sony remote, to show you that it works perfectly fine. You don't need the branded. So a lot of people switch camera systems and they'll sell all their V1s, V1 Pros, or whatever they have because they don't have the matching flash. You don't need it. Get one for your camera. Have one that matches your camera, whether it's a Sony or Nikon or whatever. The rest just leave because they're going to work perfectly fine just the way they did before when they're off camera. Anyway, let's get into the shoot and take a look at put all this together, and hopefully I can explain things as I'm going through the shoot. I think you may get something out of this. But that second light, I'm a big advocate of one light systems. I do love that. but that second light can add just a little bit of something. Especially like it doesn't matter whether you're in studio or on location. I know it's a pain on location every once in a while. Outdoors, it doesn't matter. You have the sun to backlight and but it's wintertime now. We're shooting indoors more. No matter what the location, having that second light and carrying that stuff may actually be worth it for you. Okay, now let's get into the shoot. I just want to quickly demonstrate. This is what I'm talking about, that off-centered with the Speedlight and the umbrella because of the bracket. That light is going up. So I added the dome on there to spread the light a little bit more, and it gives a little bit more even light. So I just want to make you aware of that. Now, here's that side light that I'm getting from the umbrella. You have to watch this because of those angles, the weird angles, because of that off center, and it's an umbrella on top of it. You just have to move it or rotate the umbrella a little bit to stop that, from being too much of a hot spot in the backdrop. Of course, it's coming from the one side, so you're always going to have that left side be a little bit hotter, or the umbrella side being a little bit hotter than the other side. Now, there's that rim light on her cheek on the right side. It's just too high. And that's a big mistake that a lot of people make. You want to take that down. It's just supposed to be a touch of light versus, a really hard light like that or a bright light like that. Now, with a guy, you would want that because you want to like carve out that jawline for a guy, which is perfectly fine, it being, I would say that hot. But Oh, by the way, I'm just switching out my light stand here because this light stand is too small for what I want to do. I want to raise this even higher and tilt it down, and I can't do it with the little light stand. I mean, that thing is really tall, but, I need something that's goes up to 10 feet because I really want to drop that light down on her versus, at that 45-degree angle. So I have it really high now and pointing down. And for this kind of scenario, you want to have her tilt her head up just a little bit. I mean, it just has to be a slight tilt up, and it's fine. But you have to watch the tilt as well because, again, it goes back to that other video that I did 2 videos back where I was talking about shaping the face with the light. Some people can't use broad lighting. Now, she can use any kind of lighting because she has a face shape that, any kind of lighting, just it doesn't matter with her. It's a little bit rounder and you can see it here, but it doesn't take away from her looks. I don't know how else to put that. But she's pretty flexible with lighting is what I can say. But you can definitely see here that when it's to that one side, it carves it out just a little bit more. Again, that rim light is a little too warm. I have to bring it back down again. And, believe me, a lot of people don't mind that at all, but I don't like the shine on that side because it draws your eye to that forehead, and that's not what you're looking for in these photos. And this whole group here is like that. And, I can take that down in post, and I will. Now, here it is without strobe because everybody's always asked me to do one without the flash and what it's looking like. I'm getting black because even with the giant window, these V100s are literally filling the entire image with light. Again, too hot in that forehead, so I'm going to take it down, and you're going to see a much more subtle light. You can still see it on her cheek, but it's a lot more subtle. It's not as bright. There's nothing to take down in post here. So, keep an eye on that and be aware of that rim light. When you're using that second light, this is why it has to be on manual, so you can adjust that. If the light was on TTL, it would be blowing out constantly. There's just no way to control that. Because it's looking at her face and her dress as the TTL point, and the camera's going to pick it up and go, nope, it has to be brighter. So definitely switch to manual for the rim light. Again, I am using the Nikon V100 with the Sony camera and Sony remote. It's working fine in TTL. That main light through this whole thing is on TTL. And these are as pretty close to out of camera exposure wise. Now, I did retouching on her face, by the way, but the exposure wise and color wise, these are pretty much out of camera. So the more I'm using these V100s, the more I'm liking them. I'm just very, very impressed with the quality of these. Now, I found out recently also that the V100s are coming with a plastic ring now in the United States because ProPhoto's patent infringement went through, So you can get the V100 and you have to switch that out manually by yourself if you want the magnetic features. I use them all the time. So, I got lucky and got my two V100s prior to this ruling. So mine both have the metal ring on them. Look it up on the internet. I'm not going to go into details, but I'm going to do a video on that because anyway, so I'm going to the straight Speedlight now. No, well, I have a modifier and I have the magnetic um, uh, dome on it, and it's just a straight light. I love hard light like this, and I wanted to try this in the TTL mode just to make sure it was okay. I was really good, but I did subtract a point 0.3 light because it was just a tiny bit too hot because of her dark dress and the somewhat darker backdrop. But other than that, that's the only adjustment I had to make with this Speedlight through the whole shoot, was a minus 0.3. Other than that, I was at 0 the entire time, and it worked flawlessly. Again, it doesn't matter, what V100 you have or what V1 or V1 Pro you have. If you have the remote for your camera, the V100 in any camera model, it will work, just so you know that. Now, I switched over to that reflector and put it on the black side because I am bouncing it off that whiteboard. Now, you can use a white wall or whatever you have, but I'm using the V-flat, bouncing it off the whiteboard and having it kick back into her. I put that black reflector on it so no light would reach her directly from the flash, and it gave a nice soft look coming off that wall. And it's going right across her, but again, because of that black reflector, it's stopping it from hitting her and all the light's coming from the reflection off the V-flat. Now, I'm going to flip that around to the white side because I want a different look, and I'm going to point it more at her. I want that light to hit her, and I want to, block it from going to the left side of the backdrop. I'm going to turn it just a little bit so it fades into it, but I don't want it to be blasted into it. And the way to control this, rather than using the zoom on this, because it would decrease my my vertical coverage, is to put that card on it. I apologize, and prevent it from going that way. But the white is also pushing light into the V-flat, so it's kicking back just for a little bit of fill, and it just worked out perfectly. Now, I'm just going to do one shot with the bare bulb on this because I want a little bit better coverage on her dress, and I'm not going to get it with the bare flash with the diffuser dome on it. So I'm going to switch over to the umbrella so I get a better coverage on her with her dress, which is going to make a huge difference, as you'll see. Again, controlling that light from hitting the backdrop is really hard. But if I pull her up a little bit and pull the light up a little bit and just angle the umbrella, I'll be able to do it so I can maintain that black backdrop. Again, this is just trial and error, and it takes a little bit of practice to get used to it, but you have to know your equipment. So I'm zooming this light into the umbrella a little bit closer so it doesn't have much of a spread or less of a spread versus all the way out. And I'm not using anything on it because I want to contain that light as much as possible. So now you can see that it's not hitting the backdrop and it's giving me a good look. And I dialed back again that hair light so it's not giving me a highlight on the forehead. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the shoot. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching as always.